Well, hello, good people. Finally, we're going to cover character consistency in Fooocus. Now, before we get started, I want to point out a few things that are very important to know as we progress in this process. I'm likely going to have to make 2 or 3 videos on this topic alone. The first thing is 100% character consistency through prompting is not possible. I don't care what kind of videos you watch on YouTube. The truth of the matter is you can get probably 80-90% of the way there with the tools available, but strictly through prompting, and I'm talking not training a LoRa or model, is impossible. However, with certain tools in Fooocus and things like IP adapter and other stable diffusion platforms, you can get very close to character consistency with a little bit of post-production, which we're going to go over today. Today I'm only going to cover creating one consistent character because I want you to kind of develop the concept on how we get to that point before we do anything more advanced. And lastly, to follow this video, you have to know at least the basics of Stable Diffusion and how it works, and be familiar with Fooocus. If you're brand new to Stable Diffusion, brand new to Fooocus, this is not the video for you. I'd encourage you to watch other videos before this one. Now, let's get started. Let's go over some starting settings. In terms of performance here, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm only going to use speed for now. In terms of aspect ratio, I'm going to use 832 by 1152. You can use whatever size that you like. In regards to the style tab, I encourage you to take everything off, because we're going to use a particular model, which leads me into the next tab. And for this example, I'm going to use Real Cartoon Excel. You can use whichever model you want, but if you want to follow with me, you can get this model at Civit AI, link in the description below. Everything else we're going to leave at its default settings. Now, when it comes to consistent faces in your prompt, we're going to put in this line. The style is going to be sort of a Pixar comic style, and we want a close-up headshot. I encourage you to put something like this, looking away from the camera, looking right. You're not going to get specifically looking right all the time, but I find when you do this, it'll give you multiple angles, which is exactly what we want. To get that consistent face, I tend to use 1 or 2 fictitious names. Either you make them up yourself, use a random name generator. In this case, I'm actually using real people I know. It doesn't look like them, but it serves the purpose. And I also like to state ethnicities. And the reason why I'm doing this is that certain models have certain biases. If you were to type in man in a suit, woman in a dress, when you use a fine-tuned model, they tend to all have the same face. But if you give them names and some ethnicity, you'll see that you can develop different characteristics. Now, in terms of attire, keep it very simple. In this case, where he's wearing a blue hoodie, we're not going to mention pants or anything like that because we want a headshot, okay? So it's not necessary. We're going to put a white background in the prompt, and the rest are just modifier words. As always, I'm going to leave this prompt in the description below if you're following along. I encourage you to generate a lot of these images, 10 to 20, because we're going to use them later on, if not in this video, in future videos. Now, as this generates, I'm actually going to show you what I came up with. Here are some examples of various angles and poses, very close up, some closer than others, and there are a bit of slight differences in some of the pictures, but for the most part they look very similar. And we actually only need one good front-facing image like this one, maybe without the hat, but the angles are important. But I encourage you to generate as many images, as many angles as possible. Now, once you have a face that you like, bring it into image prompt and select face swap. We're going to leave it at its default settings for now. It should be 0.9 and 0.75 because we want the likeness to be like a reference image. The prompt is still pretty much the same. The only thing that I've added now is a black baseball cap and baggy black jeans, still the same white background, and modifying words for the prompt. But this time we're going to generate 10 images. You can generate more, 20, 30 if you like. I actually encourage you to generate more. And if you find that you don't like the generation, just go ahead and skip it. What I'm personally looking for here is more images like this with a simple blue sweater. He doesn't have the cap, but that's okay. It's got a bit of a logo, which we're going to take care of later, but you can see the face is pretty consistent with the one here. Now we can crank these numbers that it's exactly the same, but that's not what I'm looking for. See here, yellow shirt, I'm going to skip that. Same thing with this, not the generation I want. So you're going to have to kind of go through quite a few of these. This one I can tell I can use. So the goal here is to get a few images that look similar. Not exactly the same, because we really only need one or two to start with before we can build more consistent images. What we're doing here is that we want different poses with similar styles. Now, once you have one or two images that you can work with, you want to bring it into Inpaint or Outpaint. Ideally here, you don't want any logos or anything. Fortunately, I got an image here without a logo on the sweater, but I want to remove the logo from the hat. Now let's zoom in here by holding Shift and using your scroll wheel if you use a mouse with a scroll wheel. And Control and your scroll wheel is going to control your brush. And we're just going to mask over the logo here. Regarding the Inpaint method, just leave it on default. And you also want to empty out your prompt area here. I would do a Control X to cut it so that we can paste it back in later when we need it. Now you may have to generate maybe up to 4 images, maybe more. Certain images could be pretty stubborn. But one thing you'll see is that as this generates, the area that's masked, you can see right away, yeah, it's still developing a logo. We're going to skip it. And we can tell by the preview if it's generating a logo, which we don't want. It may take a few tries, okay? I wish Fooocus had an object eraser, which like on Canva they have it, Playground of course. May take a couple of tries. Okay, there you go. We see now we're getting a hat without a logo. So if there's another generation that starts, you could simply stop the process because we only need one. Okay, we're going to remove this image and go back into image prompt. And we're going to use this as a reference image now. To start off, we're just going to use the default settings for both. We want to put our prompt back in here. And then we'll generate a few more images. Now, I'm only going to generate 4, but you can generate 10, 20. And basically what we want to see is the consistency passing through with the default settings. So far, this is very promising. No logos, very similar attire. We've got a full body shot here happening. So far, so good. Now you'll notice with this image, the logo is coming through even with here. That just means we have to increase the weight a bit more. However, we can actually use these images as further reference by doing the same thing, just inpainting out those logos from the hat. So with a face and one reference photo, we've created 4 different looks, somewhat consistent. We're not exactly there yet, okay? So judging from these images, you see that the concept is there, but it still lacks that consistency. So remember from the previous video, image prompt is like transferring styles. So what I'd like to do here is increase the weight to, let's say, 0.75. That should be okay. We'll leave stop at 0.5. That seems to do pretty well. Let's generate another 4 images. Okay, let's open these up. Here's the first image. There's a second. We didn't state the shoes. We probably should have put blue shoes or blue Converse or whatever the case may be. Here he's not wearing a hat, but at least the strings are consistent. The inside of the hood is not. Small details, but it's good to point them out. Here we have some logos popping out, so maybe we can increase the weight and the shirt in here. Again, we can just inpaint these out. However, the benefit of doing this now is that we have more reference photos. So let's take the closest one that looks like this. We're going to add this as a 3rd reference photo. And it's not really needed, but it does help to have a few more reference photos. But now let's get rid of full body here. And at this point in the prompt, we're going to just put sitting on a bench. So you see here we have a few images now, a whole different composition. I left the white background because again, I want to keep this really simple, but you see with just a face reference and 2 body references, we can position the character in any way, shape, or form. Yes, there's a logo here, but again, we can easily inpaint that out. This is why I was saying if you're dressing your character, to use simple styles, plain blue hoodie, plain black hoodie, whatever the case may be. More complex styles, you're going to run into issues. This isn't a foolproof method, but as you can see, this is as close to consistency as you're going to get without any sort of training. So this is like an ideal image where all the pieces came through in terms of the sweater, no logos. This one too, we can easily inpaint that logo out. And on top of that, we have more reference images that we can build, sort of a library of different poses, similar clothes, attire, and use one face, maybe 3 references at the most. But really, you only need 1 or 2 references to get close to consistent characters with a little bit of post-production within Fooocus. I'm going to show you a few that I've done with different scenes. As always, if you found some value in this video, hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below if there's anything that isn't clear. In the next video, we're going to take this process a step further. So until that next video, my friends, I'll see you when I see you.